You ever get that feeling that no matter who you vote for, nothing really changes? Like our whole political system is just stuck in the mud? Well, what if the problem isn't who we're electing? What if the real problem is the entire system of elections itself? And, it's a feeling a lot of us have, right? That these deep divisions we're seeing, they feel like they go way beyond just disagreeing on policy. This quote really hits the nail on the head. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't with us, it's baked into the very structure of our politics.
Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about a cure, we've got to diagnose the disease. Let's dig in and figure out why our politics feels so completely stuck.
It's really a vicious cycle when you think about it. First, to win an election, you often have to take more extreme positions, right? That's what fires up the base, gets the media talking, and most importantly, gets the donations flowing. That leads to step two, a total dependence on donors, which, let's be honest, can open the door to corruption. And the final result of all that division and money in politics? Total gridlock. Nothing gets done.
And look, this is not just some abstract idea. I mean, take a look at these countries. They're all democracies, but they still struggle with some pretty serious corruption issues. It's a really stark reminder that just having elections doesn't automatically mean you have a clean government. The constant, relentless need for campaign cash creates this weakness, and it's a real, measurable problem all over the world.
And then there's this other huge problem, what you might call the temporal trap. See, politicians are always living on a 2 or 4 year clock. Their entire world revolves around the next election. So what incentive do they have to tackle these huge, slow-moving crises like climate change or our crumbling roads and bridges? The pain of fixing those things is immediate, but the payoff? That's way, way down the road, long after they're out of office. So they kick the can.
All right, so if the problems are so obvious, you got to ask, why don't our usual fixes ever seem to work? We talk about campaign finance reform, term limits, but the core problems just stick around.
Well, here's the absolute key to understanding this. We tend to treat things like donor dependency and career politicians as bugs in the system, glitches that we can just patch over with a new law. But what if they aren't bugs? What if they are actually features of the system? I mean, they're the natural outcome of a system built on competitive elections, and you can't just slap a patch on a core feature. And that right there is exactly why these reforms keep failing. There's this idea called the hydraulic theory of campaign finance, and it's perfect. Money flows into politics just like water. If you block one channel, it will just find another way around, over, or under. As long as winning an election costs an absolute fortune, the money will always find a way in. The only way to really solve it is to turn off the faucet entirely. So all this leads to a pretty radical thought, doesn't it? What if we've been going about this all wrong? What if, instead of trying to patch the system, we need to rethink it from the ground up? The answer, and this might surprise you, could come from a very, very old idea.
And that ancient idea is called sortition. Now, stick with me here. The concept is actually pretty simple. Instead of electing our officials, we select them randomly, by lottery, from the general population. Seriously, think of it like jury duty, but instead of deciding a court case, you're helping to make laws. You'd end up with a government that's a true cross-section of the people, a statistical mirror of the whole country.
Okay, and here is the historical twist that is just fascinating. The ancient Athenians, the people who literally invented democracy, they actually thought elections were an aristocratic system. Why? Because they believed elections always favor the rich, the famous, the smooth talkers. For them, the only truly democratic method was sortition, because it was the only way every single citizen had an equal shot at serving. All right, so I know this sounds pretty wild, but what would it actually look like? How on earth could a system like this create a calmer, more thoughtful, and, wiser kind of politics? Well, think about it. The second you change how people get into office, you change everything. All the incentives flip. Suddenly, there are no party leaders you have to please, so your focus shifts from party politics to just solving the problem in front of you. There are no campaigns to raise money for, so that corrupting link to big donors, gone instantly. And because it's no longer a gladiator match between two teams, the whole temperature just drops. You'd get a government that actually looks and thinks like the rest of us. I mean, just try to imagine it. A room full of decision makers with no next election to worry about, no 24/7 news cycle to perform for. The whole dynamic just shifts. The need to grandstand, to attack, to score points, it just evaporates. And what's left? People can actually start listening to each other, working together, and focusing on one thing and one thing only, finding the best solution. Now, you might be thinking, what about experts? We need experts. And you're absolutely right. But this system doesn't get rid of them. In fact, it makes their role even clearer. Experts are brought in to lay out the facts. They explain the options and tell the group what is possible. But, and this is the crucial part, it's the randomly selected citizens, the ones who reflect our collective values, who get to decide what is desirable. And remember that whole short-term thinking problem? This is how you solve it. There's a great metaphor for this: planting a tree in whose shade you'll never sit. A group of citizens chosen by a lot can do exactly that. Because they're not trying to build a political career or win the next election, they are completely free to make the tough choices that will benefit our kids and grandkids. It's a kind of long-term thinking our current system just isn't built for. So when you boil it all down, it really presents us with a fundamental choice about what we actually want democracy to be. On one side, you have what we've got now, electoral politics. It's basically a permanent contest, a performance, a conflict, and we, the citizens, are mostly just spectators. On the other side is this vision of sortition politics, a genuine project where we all get to participate, to deliberate, and where we become the authors of our own solutions. And really, it all comes down to this one single question, and it's a question that cuts right to the heart of what we believe about democracy. Do you believe that ordinary people, if you give them the time and the resources, can actually govern themselves? Because how we answer that question is going to define our future. Is democracy supposed to be a show that we just watch from the sidelines? Or is it a responsibility that we're all meant to share? At the end of the day, the choice between performance and participation, well, that's up to us.